Live.
Welcome to our Traction Lab Startup Reality Check, our weekly AMA stroke office hours where you can ask us anything about startups and we will deliver it in our usual style. Plenty of fun, plenty of banter, plenty of science. So whatever questions you've got, feel free to drop those down into the chat right down below if you're on LinkedIn, and then right off over to the right-hand side of your screen if you are on the YouTubes. But leave us those questions. We'll prioritize the live ones, but we do have a few that were submitted in advance, and we'll do those. If you need a little bit more breathing room, you want to ask something a little bit more formulaic, but still totally anonymously, then you hit tractionlab.io, hit the content button at the top, and there's a place that you can use to submit your question in advance. And thank you to the 3 or 4 of you who submitted questions in advance. I don't know your final count, but appreciate your contributions and involvement. I'm sure Cameron will be warming up the chat. And so while that happens, I will do a couple of shameless plugs. So for those of you who are watching live, shameless plug, Traction Lab Venture School, still taking registration. So if you want to figure out how to get a repeatable path to sales, maybe it's your first sale, maybe it's your 10th, but they don't all look the same, and you want to find that predictable, repeatable, and therefore scalable path to growth, check out the Traction Lab Venture School. If you are trying to raise capital, if you're in that process and trying to move that forward and make your company more fundable, both through Traction and through investment readiness, then check out the Traction Lab Investment Readiness Engine, which is brought to you in partnership with the city of Sacramento. So check that out. We'll do those two things and then end with a competition for $100,000 in equity investment. And then very lastly, all of y'all, we've got coming up in just a few days, if you're watching this live, we have an in-person live recording of the Traction Lab podcast. So if you want to come to Science and Startups, which we're hoping to make maybe a monthly thing, this first one here will be celebrating our 100th episode of the Traction Lab podcast. Well, what? Super excited about that. Appreciate all of your support. Come check us out in person. We'll drop the link to the Loom in the show notes, but if you just go to tractionlab.io and hit events, you can find that there as well. Get yourself registered. It's totally free. Come hang out with us. We're going to have a bit of fun. We're going to do a live recording. I'm sure there'll be some audience interaction if that's your bag. Come prepared to help us help startups, and even if that startup is you. So with all of that having been said, we're going to get to our live questions in a minute, but there's been kind of a lot going on lately. And so moment of brevity. So Cameron, are you wearing a running shirt? Is that what's happening?
I am. So this is actually was a recent purchase when I was in Japan. So it was it's a running shirt, but it also, hopefully I can just wear it around. I don't have to run every time I wear it. That would kind of suck, but.
Yes, it would. But so out of the corner, like it looks great looking at it. I'm like, oh, that's super fun. I said, you got the blue, you got the purple, the white. But out of the corner of my eye, like if I'm looking elsewhere, like looking at the chat or looking at the notes or anything like that, out of the corner of my eye and my peripheral vision, I catch your shirt and it comes through as this blue gingham pattern. And I keep thinking you're wearing a Wizard of Oz Dorothy dress.
Okay.
And as soon as I look at you, it's obviously not that, and it comes right back to this cool shirt. But every once in a while, I just think you're dressed as Dorothy.
Okay. Well, I'll put my heels together and see what happens.
Speaking of which, I know you were grabbing the questions from the forum. Yeah. We didn't have time to do it in advance, so apologies for vamping while Cameron did that. But I don't know, were you able to grab them?
Yeah, here they are. I'm happy to take the lead on walking us through them. So here we go. Let's just double checking to make sure there's anyone in the chat going once, twice, thrice. All right, let's hop into the submitted questions. So again, thank you everyone for pre-submitting these so we can answer them live. But this is a pre-seed B2B founder that submitted this. They're working on a productivity tool for HR teams. And here's the scenario that they've presented to us. They ran 47 customer discovery calls before they built anything. The feedback was incredible. People told them this was a huge pain and that they'd pay for a fix. We launched 8 weeks ago to that exact list and converted two. Both are on a free trial that hasn't billed yet. What happened between the interviews and the launch from your perspective? So, what's your take, Jay Dooms, or the shredder?
Well, for me, this sounds like we didn't get evidence of their buying behavior, that we didn't capture intent from them. So we had these discovery calls. We felt they went well. We counted it as a win. And then when we actually asked them to put some skin in the game, to do something, they opted out because they were never intending to do anything in the first place. And the way that we had structured the discovery calls allowed us to capture that as success, as a yes, when it would have been a no if we had tried to capture their intent a little bit better. So I would love to bring in, like, I know you're going to talk about like the say-do gap here. I'd love to bring in the team framework, but I don't want to steal all the thunder. So I'll let you.
Maybe I'll just give the larger concept of the say-do gap, and then you can talk about the team framework to close that gap. But basically, this is one of the main cases of what we call the say-do gap, where we have these customer conversations. We have this energy that we feel it's going in the right direction, and we think that there's interest, right? But we haven't yet moved across that chasm into intent and actually demonstrating true willingness to pay. And so another way we try to visualize this, we call it like the ladder of evidence. And so, someone's saying they have the problem and it's a big problem, like that's better than like them saying that's, well, maybe not actually than them saying it's not a problem. But in this case, it led to building something for them when they weren't actually paying customers. So that's the risk that can come from some of this. But when we're on one side of the say do gap, where they're just purely saying like this is something that they're feeling and that they would ultimately buy this, but we don't truly know that until they actually are willing to put the credit card down or give you cash for what you're trying to build. And so the more we can start to push actions to elicit that actual intent versus interest, we can actually separate from who is our customer versus who is not, which is very vital. Because then we wouldn't have been hedging our bet, or we wouldn't have been making this bet thinking 47 people or a large percentage of them are going to be our customers when only 2 signed up for a free trial and none of them are paying customers, right? So we've wasted time, but we also have optimized for people who aren't our customers. So we truly haven't built anything for our customer because we don't have anyone yet paying. So I'll turn it back to you, JDM, to maybe dive into the team framework and how that can move from interest to intent with our economic buyers.
Yeah, and I'll just do this by virtue of example. So they said, people told me this was a huge pain and they pay for a fix. So you basically gave them the ability to, without any consequence at all, agree with you. So social pressure aligns with that. They don't want to disappoint. They don't want to have conflict, whatever. Same reason you tell the waiter you liked the food when it was mediocre, at best. And that's what's happening here. And so you just gave them an out and they took it. And it also can be the case where they do experience the pain and they would love to have it solved, but it's not the top problem on their list. And so theoretically, yeah, under the right circumstances, I would absolutely pay money to solve this. I'm telling 100% the truth, but I haven't been presented with the decision. And so it's not real. So theoretically, I would convert, but I'm not really going to convert. And I don't know that because you have not put the decision in front of me yet. And so that's the gap we want to close. That's going from say to do, to use Cameron's language around that. And the framework, you want to just cover my face with the logo there? Is that what's happening?
I just wanted to see how big it was.
It's my head or the logo?
Well, both.
I would think you'd already know.
Their head's pretty big because I asked to have it be the logo as big as possible, and it didn't even cover it.
Jesus. So and another way to do that, like to make them have to make that decision sooner, is by asking them for something. And there are four things that you can ask for. We call it the team framework, or the four asks. It's TEAM. It's time, effort, access, and money. Those are the four things that you can ask for to close that say-do gap, to make them put some skin in the game and actually make that decision, and not just keep it theoretical. So the reverse order is easy here. Like money, that's the M, right? You can ask them for money. And if you have a product, then you ask them directly to pay for it. If you don't, can you do a pre-sale? Can you do an LOI? Can you do a paid pilot? Can you get can you do a fake door test? Like there's a lot of things that you could do to capture a money intent, from collecting money to just capturing the intent there. But that's money, right? That's the obvious one. So I like to get that one out of the way. But now we have time, effort, and access. And these are pretty straightforward. Time is just, can you just ask them for more time? Will they give you more time? And you don't want to do like a 5-minute thing, but like, will they do another video or a video call, like with an agenda? We want to dive into this. Can they go and prep for this conversation by pulling some reference data for them to like engage in this conversation? Like, will they actually put in that work? If they won't, the problem isn't severe and urgent enough for them to solve right now. So that's time. Next one is effort. And so this kind of blurs the line a little bit with the example that I just gave, but can you get them to do something? Can you get them to provide you with a data extract that you can use to create a more realistic demo or scenario for them that they can use? If they're not willing to put in the effort to do that, it's not a severe and urgent enough problem. So that's time and effort. And the last one is access. And so this is where they introduce you to the right people. The one case that we see all the time is like the obvious one. I'll go into the less obvious one. Is when they're like, oh yeah, I'd love the solution. This would be awesome, but so-and-so has to sign off on that. And they can only do that if, we get the go ahead from compliance. And so I know that they require SOC 2 and stuff like that. And so then you take away that, like, oh, what we really need is to like pursue this SOC 2 compliance. No, what you need is the intro to the compliance guy, so that you can get exactly what that barrier is. And if that was really the issue, they will introduce you to the compliance guy. And also in there was the guy who makes the decision. They will introduce you to the guy who makes the decision. They will give you that access. If that was an excuse, they won't. And that's how you tell the difference, because they weren't willing to invest the relational capital, their own reputation internally to the company with that. Another form of access is also customers. So like if you're trying to help, if you're doing a B2B play and you're trying to help serve customers, will they introduce you to some of their customers so that you can talk to them directly to help them, serve them, hear their problems? Again, they're putting some reputation online. Can you get them to be willing to do that? There's lots of ways access can look, but will they really introduce you to the people that you need to know? Will they introduce you to also some of their competitors or friends who might be interested in the product as well, who could be potential customers? If they won't make any of those introductions, boop. So that was the thumbs down if you're listening to the audio version. But that's the team framework: time, effort, access, money. Close the say-do gap by actually asking them for something on that discovery call. Don't just let them weasel out by saying yes to a theoretical question, because even if they're telling you the truth, you can't trust it.
Awesome. Well, I just threw in the chat a link to one of our traction thinking articles around the team framework, and particularly stop counting yeses, start counting commitments. So again, it's not about measuring interest. It's a matter of measuring intent. And this is a great way to push that conversation and close that say-do gap.
Awesome. All right. Well, if you're watching live and you've got a question, we prioritize the live questions. So go ahead and drop that into the chat and we will take it. If you want to submit a question in advance, like these fine people did, it's anonymous. You can go to tractionlab.io, hit content, fill out the little form, and send us a question. You get a little bit more breathing room than you do in a LinkedIn or YouTube comment. But we do prioritize the live one. So if you've got one, drop it in while you're typing your question, your thoughts, your ideas. What?
I was fishing. I've got a live one.
Oh, okay.
We're fishing for the live ones. We're fishing for the live ones.
We are fishing for the live ones. We're saying, help us out. Help us to produce higher quality office hours by asking some questions live. And you don't even have to ask a question. You just chime in with your opinion. Say what you're working on. Drop, like this is the thing that's most important to my startup right now. Whatever it is you're doing, drop it in. We're going to read it out loud. We're going to talk about it. We're going to have some fun. Just do it. Let us know you're out there. With that, let's while they're typing furiously at their keyboards, Cameron, what's the next pre-submitted question?
Cool. All right. So this next one is a deep tech founder working in the advanced materials space. In terms of the scenario that they're grappling with, is they shared we have 3 design partners. They're engaged. They take every call that they ultimately reach out about. They keep requesting new features in terms of this design partnership, and 2 asked to extend for another quarter, but none of them has signed a part or a paid agreement or committed to one on delivery. So their investors are wondering, think this is great traction, but they're now questioning, is this actual good traction? So what are we thinking related to this deep tech founder navigating these design partnerships? And maybe, for education, Jay Dooms, would you maybe educate, like, what is a design partnership, for those that aren't super aware of what that actually looks like?
Yeah, thanks. I wasn't gonna do that at all. So, thanks for not leaving our friends in the dark. For if you're not familiar in the deep tech space, a design partner is somebody who could theoretically be a customer, but of course, you're working on deep tech. You're years away from having a product in market. They can't be a customer now, but what they can be is a design partner. There's somebody who goes along the journey with you to help you develop the product and get it live, even though they were theoretically a potential customer. And they look a lot like a customer because they have the problem with severe and urgent, and that motivates them to want a solution to exist, which means therefore helping you out to bring that product to market. So they share that in common with customers who are super early adopters. In that case, we'd probably call them more innovators and early adopters. They're that initial 2.5% as opposed to like the 13.5 or the 12.5% that are early adopters. So they're right there, earliest possible adopters. So that's generally a design partner, and there's a lot of things that they tend to look like and things they have in common. But one of the biggest indicator to connect this to the question about whether or not this counts as traction is that they're investing into your company. And that can look like a literal investment. So they can make a strategic investment in your company.
Mhm.
They can help cover costs. They can pay for the rights designs together. Again, they're getting to help shape what this looks like, and that is valuable. If they have a big, severe, and urgent problem, they will help pay to help shape what this eventual solution looks like at the end of the day. But they're also investing time, which, like the question says, they take every call, they're engaged, they're going to invest time, and just tie it back to team, time, effort, and access. They'll invest all of those things at a really substantive level for a long period of time. So that's a design partner. The question here is like, okay, we've got these design partners. They take the calls, they request features, and they are asking to extend, but none of them has signed a paid agreement or commit. So have you asked? Like, are you having the money conversation and they're pushing back, or are you just afraid to have the money conversation? Because those are 2 very different things. But I would note that they're not providing any money. So yeah, it's kind of like, how committed are they? Are they really just helping you with R&D because they think this is interesting? And so, like, it's cool and they'd like to see it exist, and it's a passion or a hobby project for them, but ultimately at the end of the day, they're not going to become a customer. I don't know.
I'd be curious of your thoughts, like, and I know this is a deep tech example, or not example, but situation here. But I'm coming to kind of like the unpaid pilot thought process, right? Where it's like, oh, well, hey, customer, enterprise customer, we're going to try this out. And, all we're asking is for your feedback. It seems very similar to that type of process. Is that, I guess, if you were to kind of compare traction, are those similar in the sense of, like, they're kind of moving the solutioning forward, but not really proving desirability. They're proving some of the feasibility components, but again, we might be optimizing for the wrong customer at the end of the day. But recognizing, in the case of a deep tech, that might be more fundamental to the livelihood of the startup than, maybe the enterprise startup. Would be curious of your thoughts connecting those two.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this will probably tie back. I think it was last week's office hours. We were talking about technology readiness levels and customer readiness levels. I think that was last week, maybe, that we were talking about that. But this is as you're going through deep tech, as you're trying to do a deep tech play, you're like really developing out the technology, and there's a series of things that you go through in order to develop the technology. You start with like the basic principles, then you form a concept around it, and then you end up all the way at the end with with TRL9 with like a product that's actually robust and in market and fully purchased and bought and all that stuff. It's operational. So like that's like and there's like these 9 steps. I did the first 2 and the last one. And but because that just has to do with the technology and doesn't have anything to do with market demand, there's like a parallel set of readiness that you can go through. This referred to as a CRL, which is customer readiness level or market readiness level, depending on who you ask, that follows a similar path. It's basically like our ladder of evidence is kind of how that ends up looking at the end of the day. And so we start out with, is there evidence of a problem, and a customer that has it, and that problem's severe and urgent enough that it makes them a willing buyer, right? That's the first 2 like readiness levels, basically. And then we can kind of work our way up the ladder of evidence through that, right? And so like we might say that, getting a warm intro or referral, like that's pretty good evidence, but that probably correlates to like CRL, I don't know, 4 or 5, something like that. I think 5 is an early adopter segment, so something like that, which is great. But we're still following through that same process, and it doesn't really matter that it's deep tech versus not, because we're still looking for a lot of those same signals. They just happen in slightly different ways. And so, like, to kind of go directly at it, if I'm thinking about this, and this has kind of been on my mind because I'm working on an article for our Substack on how a lot of these traction science principles apply in the deep tech space. So like one of the things that we want to see is like, do we have these, when we think about like the early evidence and we're looking at design partners, are we able to get them into an early conversation? And are we able to get them to give us time, effort, access? Then are we able to get them to give us money and keep pouring into that? In other words, we're looking for those traction signals. But what we're not doing is trying to sell something that completely doesn't exist yet. We're probably not doing a fake door test on a primitive like idea in the deep tech space, simply because the technology actually has to mature a little bit before we're able to do that. And when I say the technology has to mature a little bit, I mean, we at least need to have a concept of what the technology is and what problem it's solving for which customer. And like, once we get to that level, then we can maybe do something like that, but we're still climbing the same ladder.
I like it. That was awesome. Cool. Thanks for the deep dive on the deep tech founder question there. So yes, definitely wanted to shout thanks, Max, for one, being here, but also engaging in the chat. Looking forward to hearing more about how Basket is going. Quick congratulations on graduating from SEA, and looks like you're wrapping up some design today and off to marketing as well. So I did throw in the chat, if you're hanging in there and are willing to share, or maybe a question or challenge you're navigating in the marketing space. Like, what does that look like to launch marketing today? Like, I'd be curious of how we're looking at success, what tactics, what are we doing to ultimately move that forward in the process. So would love to learn more. It looks like we did get a post here. So let me share this real quick. So maybe we can tackle that. So they've been posting heavily on social media, getting great traction and orders, but now we'll start doing Facebook and Instagram ads, email campaigns, etc. So thanks for dialing in and sharing that. So Jay Dooms, as you're kind of thinking about it, what are some of the things that you might be looking at in terms of, we talk a little bit about the difference between go-to-market and marketing. And so, when we're looking at kind of the first thing for me was, one, sounds like you got some great traction. One, like, what does that look like for you internally, and how are you telling that story of what traction looks like? Is that, clicks to the website? Is that paying customers? Are those and how are we getting customers in that space? Are they predictable path of you continuing to get them, or what does that look like for you going forward? What things come to mind for you, JDM, as well as you're kind of reading that effort of launching marketing for a basket here?
Yeah, I think two big things come to mind. So one is, I think, what you were just saying, which is, what does great traction mean? Like, we've been posting on social media and we're getting sales is very different than we've been posting on social media and we've been getting likes. So I don't know what that means. Perhaps Max, you can expand on that. And I'm not super familiar with basket, so apologies for like having to answer a little bit more generically. Feel free to drop details in the chat. We love to have the live engagement here. But since there's a 1 minute delay, I can't wait for it. I'll have to keep going. LinkedIn's got that 1 minute delay that kills us. But okay, so here we go. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing that I'm thinking through is like, okay, we have Facebook, Instagram ads, email campaigns, and then etc. So we have this basket, no pun intended, of things that we want to try. And that leads me to wonder if there's evidence for any of these things, or if it's like, well, we think customers are out there somewhere, and so we're going to try different things until we can find them. Those are two very different things. And that leads back to, Cameron, the thing that you teed me up for before, which is marketing versus go-to-market. If you know that your customers are on Instagram and you know that they respond to this particular message and that they tend to convert at a particular rate when they do, then you can do marketing, because now you can hand this off. You know what works. You can optimize. You can get some people who are really smart to create better creative and collateral and do the whole thing. That's cool. However, if you don't have all of that data, if we don't know that for sure that they're there and what message is going to cause them to convert and at what rate, and that's not predictable and repeatable and therefore scalable yet, we actually can't do marketing. We have to do go-to-market. And so we can use marketing tools. So that doesn't mean we can't run an ad. It just means that the intent of running the ad is to discover those things so that we can scale that. And so then that becomes an aspect of discovery. And in order to do that, we need to say, okay, who is the exact customer and the pain that we're looking to target? What's the value proposition for them? And then where can we find them? How do we meet them where they are? We don't want to get awareness. We don't want to go posting on social media just to get people to have heard of our company. We want to actually we want to meet them where they are, where the people who are like, as soon as they hear the thing, they're like, I'm in. I'm buying that. Like, take my money right now. Whites of their eyes. Like, we want to find them exactly where they are and put the message exactly just in front of them. We're not looking for awareness. We're not looking to discover. So we're not looking for them to discover. We're looking to discover. We're not looking for them to discover. And so that really just changes the nature of the game that we're actually trying to do. It's much more hypothesis driven, and we're going to proportion our bets to the evidence. So if we have no evidence on Instagram, then we're going to want to proportion our effort pretty carefully. We're going to want to proportion our spend pretty carefully. We're going to come up with a really tight hypothesis, and we're going to say, like, what is the riskiest part of this thing? And we're not going to worry about having a high converting landing page before we've even figured out if we can get people to click on an ad in the first place. Because again, we're just stacking up these assumptions before we actually go out and test anything. So that's what I'm thinking about it. Apologies for the generic response there, because I just don't know enough about basket. Cameron did share the link with me, so I'm going to take a look at that while I let him reply. But thank you, Mohammed. Appreciate the comment. Insightful is what we're going for and probably rarely hitting. So thanks for the ego boost. What do you think, Cameron?
No, I think you nailed it. I don't have a ton to add. I think maybe just while you're pulling up the link, just for our audience as well, if you haven't connected with Max and don't know what he's working on, he's created a basket. So think of when you go to whatever your grocery store is, one of those carry baskets that you bring into the store, and trying to ultimately derive, instead of bringing the bags that you then use the basket, that basically you just have the basket that you take and leave with, and looking to drive sanitary options and things of that nature. So really, from my perspective, looks like it's going direct to consumer. And so, sounds like you're tackling some of the right overall channels within that space. But again, that's right sized to who the actual customer is. So, if we're targeting, an audience that's younger, maybe we want to, use a specific channel versus, a different type of generation. We're using a different channel to get in front of them. And so I think the big thing that when we hear marketing, I know Josh and I probably are like, okay, let's, you're early stage. We want to have a really intentional way of we're getting into the market. And so really applying more of a go-to-market approach and having this clear understanding of who our early adopter is, what channels are they looking for solutions already, and then what is that core value proposition going forward. So that's kind of the core element of how is their life better having used this, and what's that return on investment of them buying this particular product, right? So how many uses does it need to ultimately go through in order to get the value back from what they're ultimately doing going forward. So again, appreciate you dropping in the chat. If you have follow-up questions, feel free to throw them in there, but we'll keep rocking and rolling. So I think with that, we'll come to our last question here that was pre-submitted.
So if you've got them live,
If you do got them live,
we're
we're hanging out. We're going to be chilling with you if you're on here live asking those questions. And we do appreciate both Max, Muhammad, for both of you throwing thoughts into the chat here. So if you have specific questions, we'll bring them on up. But appreciate you engaging nonetheless. And maybe
Max may have missed everything that we said, dropped out for a second, but I'm back. I have that effect on people. That's what happens when I start
they
talking.
all usually leave. They're like, oh, you're gonna start shredding my idea, and I'll leave, or some really sign up for it nonetheless. But no, joking aside, appreciate you being here, and I think we'll hop on, and if you have follow-up questions, I was able to maybe share a few thoughts for you there, Max. But all right, this is a seed stage SaaS founder, and they've taken 15 investor meetings and gotten 15 different reasons for passing. Some of those being too early, market's too small, not enough traction, wrong timing. And based on that feedback, this founder is rewriting their deck almost every call, and it isn't working. So whose feedback do I act on? So I guess basically they're saying, how do we go forward in this investment landscape when they're getting different thought processes going forward, and how do they continue to iterate the deck? So Jay Dooms, what are you thinking related to this?
I think that there's a meta thing to consider here, and that I think actually negates the question that they're asking. So which reason is that what they said? Whose feedback do I act on? That's actually the wrong question, because that implies that there's some, one of these is right and one of these is the reason. And I actually think the meta story is the reason. And I would just phrase that as a lack of conviction. And so we talk a lot about high conviction at the Traction Lab, right? It's not confidence. Conviction is backed by evidence. It's validated confidence in something. And what you're seeing is just a broad spectrum lack of conviction. And then people are giving all kinds of different reasons for why they don't feel conviction. And some of those might just be excuses, but most of them are probably just it's what caught my attention. But overall, I just have low conviction in this. And what we want to do is try to dig under the surface. I know I said meta up above, and now I'm mixing metaphors by saying dig below the surface, but we want to dig below the surface of the feedback and try to see what it's pointing at. We have a tool, Cameron, while you're giving your thoughts, I'll go pull out the old article and drop that in the chat. But the investor feedback pyramid, which is a helpful tool for this. And there's 4 levels to the pyramid. And the basic idea is that all the feedback that you receive sounds like storytelling feedback. And that's what we see here, right? We're okay, they're telling us the market's too small, so I'm going to go fix that slide and then, iterate on my deck and go back. What we're doing is fixing the story that we're telling. We're fixing the visual, we're fixing the story. Those are the top 2 levels. But that's not really what they're pointing at. Like the story is the easy part. The reason that you're getting passed on is not because your slides weren't great, and it's not because you weren't telling a good story. It's because to that investor, you're not fundable yet. And that could mean two different things depending on the lower two levels of the pyramid. So I'll actually drop to the bottom of the pyramid and work upward instead. The very bottom of this, thanks for grabbing the article there, Cameron, and putting that link in chat. Like the very bottom of the article, or so the very bottom of the pyramid that you'll find in that article is what we call the thesis. And so this is the kinds of companies that those startups tend to, or sorry, that those founders tend, so that, wow. The bottom of the pyramid is the thesis, which is the kinds of startups that those investors tend to invest in. So at certain stages in certain industries with certain founders, demographics, firmographics, there's a number of different things. Geography, fits into there. There's a lot of different reasons why they invest in certain kinds of companies. And so if you're just fundamentally pitching to the wrong investors, you're going to get feedback like this. They might be talking about how, your market is too small and we're not seeing enough traction. But what they're really saying is like, you don't have a credible enough go-to-market for the size of check that we write. You're just pitching to the wrong investors. Like you want to raise 500 and they write 250 checks. That's wrong. Like they're not going to fill half the round in one check. They're used to running $250,000 checks on rounds that are like 2 million. And so like we're just looking at the wrong investor. And so that when their feedback is not meeting you where you're at, it's feedback as if you were at the level of their thesis and you're not. The next level of the pyramid is the business model. So this is the one where like you are at the right, it's a thesis level. It is a good fit. You are the avatar of the kind of company that they invest in. You're just not investable yet. And so when they say that like, your business model, isn't super clear to me, what they're actually saying is your business model sucks. And like, we just don't believe in your business model. We have low conviction in your business model. And so this is where I say like, go underneath the surface. So when you're like, and when you got all this feedback from 15 investors, and they're all giving you all this different stuff, what they're telling you is a lack of conviction. Dig behind the surface, make sure you're talking to the right investors. If you're not, discard their feedback for now, or at least set it aside, and then look at the ones who are, and then say, is this, if we can eliminate the thesis from this, what are they pointing at in the business model? Stop looking at the top two parts of the pyramid, because they're not what the problem is here. You can't fix your deck out of this. You can't pitch your way out of this. You actually have to become a more fundable company. You can't just try to put a more fundable story around it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the quick summation of this for me is like oftentimes we find founders really focusing on thinking that their business is about raising the capital, and you need to raise capital to potentially get to that next milestone. It's not always the case, but the foundational element is like when we're looking at the feedback, it's not how do I necessarily change my deck to tell a better story. It's how do I see the gap in my business and go do the work potentially to prove those points. But that should be right sized based on the feedback, based on the investor that's actually funding at the round that you're investing. And so again, like if we're reading into like we don't have enough traction, well, that looks very different if you're talking to an angel investor at the pre-seed round than a Series A investor, looking at traction at that stage, right? And so they're going to be likely looking at what evidence they need to be ultimately different at that element of which stage you're going to be at. And so it's not how do I go build a prettier deck and tell a better story? It's how do I go do that work to gather the evidence to make this more attractive of an opportunity for them to see how I can actually use this capital to get to the next milestone that I'm trying to prove my startup with.
Couldn't agree more.
Awesome. So it looks like we did have a follow-up comment question here from Mac. So maybe I can read that out and then we'll see where it takes us. So right now, the hardest thing that working through is a version of analysis paralysis. So things are changing so much right now. For example, what application to use to create an email campaign. Used to think that MailChimp was the right one, but then there's thousands of options, including built into things such as Shopify, which might be where you're selling this, but also could use Claude to design an email, but missing an important analytics in that case. So ultimately we know what you're working through in terms of the analysis paralysis. And so I think that that's fair. There are a lot of options and things you can, tools you can use in that process. But I think at the end of the day, like say MailChimp as an email campaign tool is only as good as you having the list of people to work, right? And so, and is that how your customers are going to purchase those items, right? And so we talk about a concept called sequencing. And so the element of emailing our potential customers, well, there's a risk before that is, can we get them onto our email campaign, and how do we position our offering in front of them to get them onto the email list in order to keep them up to date, right? And is that Instagram? Is that TikTok, or where are they actually looking for this? And that's I would say, a greater risk than us using the right tool of MailChimp or Claude, those types of things. I think at the end of the day, you likely can get data from a variety of those, maybe less of open rates or other things. I can share from a Carlson Center perspective, we use MailChimp, and you get some decent data in there, and up to a certain subscriber amount, which I think just in probably getting started, you would be at a potentially free level. So, I think there's a lot of elements there, but at the end of the day, it's less about the tool. It's more what's going into the communication to a customer. They're not like, oh, I'm going to not convert because you use ConvertKit over MailChimp, or you sent me a direct email, as much as, oh, the offer was sufficient, and I'm that target customer in the process. And so I think hopefully to maybe help you tackle some of that is, like, I think if we spend more time thinking about the tool than what it actually looks like to engage the customer, we're not, I mean, I guess we're kind of wasting time in that process versus actually like getting our hypotheses out into the world by whatever means that is. And so if it's like, hey, we think MailChimp's the tool, maybe you don't send all 100 emails at once. You send 10 of them and see if that lands, and what is the data that we're expecting in that case, to then say, here's how we iterate that going forward. And so starting with what is our assumption related to all of these components, but really looking at what is the core foundation at the end of the day is trying to get in front of those customers, and what's the biggest risk in the sequence of actually attracting those customers. But would be curious, JDM, what your thoughts are in that process.
I agree with everything you said. I actually don't have too much to add on. I would say I want to give you permission, Max, to simplify things a bit.
I like that.
Because we're not looking for the eventual solution. We're not looking for the scalable solution. Is it when our list is constantly growing and we've got 10,000 people on it? Is it MailChimp? Is it kit.com? Is it something else? Like, that's not, we don't care about that. That question does not matter right now, because we don't even know if we're ever going to get there. We don't even know if email is going to be the right tool. So let's not think about it. Instead, let's think about what is the right tool for right now, for right in this moment, for the question that we have to answer. Migrating an email list from platform A to platform B when you're small is not a big deal. So I wouldn't even worry about it. And if you're doing, like, for example, if you end up migrating to like the big players like kit.com, they will help you with the migration if you have one of their higher paid plans. So like, who cares? Who the fuck cares? Another way to say it is like, the right tool for the job is the one that gets used. Mm-hmm. So if you're really familiar with MailChimp, go ahead and use MailChimp. If you're not familiar with MailChimp, don't use MailChimp, right? If you're familiar with the Google workspace, and that's where you do everything is in like Gmail and shit, then you can check out a tool called Yet Another Mail Merge. Yeah. Or YAMM, Y-A-M-M. There's a free tier and then a paid tier that's pretty cheap that allows you to do it entirely from within just a Google Sheet and your Google address. You don't want to send 10,000 emails out that way, because you're going to end up probably triggering some spam filters at some point. And when you do, you don't want that hurting your day-to-day, like everyday email address. But anyway, but if you're for the early experiments, to Cameron's point, you're probably not sending 10,000 at a time. You're probably not doing that. So it's fine. And then I would also even say, like, do we even need a proper like email list management mail merge tool? Like, what are we using it for? If we're trying to run experiments to see if we can get people to convert, you can send some emails manually. It's fine. You're going to spend less time sending out 20 emails manually than you are to setting up, MailChimp or something. and trying to keep that running, all the templates and everything else. So the right tool for the job is the one that gets used. So just say, what is the thing that we need to learn? And then what's the narrowest possible path to get that learning? And if it's MailChimp, great. If it's not, use something else. But the key to your question, like the key to get out of analysis paralysis, is to stop analyzing. Because whatever decision you make right now is both the right one and the wrong one. So who cares?
There you go.
Cool.
Cool.
We got this Max said in film, we said the best camera in the world is the one you have on you. That's right. Exactly. Who cares about the lens you don't have with you or the camera you don't have on you? Yeah. If all you've got is your phone, stop worrying about how fancy the red would do. All right. Got another question coming in from Uzair. Dear's discussions focus primarily on products, or do you also explore how businesses may need to adopt their business models in response to emerging AI trends and the evolving business and economic environment? I'll say like super shortly that what the Traction Lab itself mostly focuses on highly scalable startups and innovations in that space, as opposed to like standard innovation. But we do a lot of corporate innovation work as well in various capacities, and have done some of that before. So the answer is yes, although we mostly take it from an innovation perspective, which necessitates some type of commercializable product. I don't know, Cameron, if you have more thoughts to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I go back to kind of one of our core ethos is, yes, there's growing and emerging trends around AI and how that has implications for existing businesses and obviously startups itself. But I think one of the core elements is like how that again ties to the existing business in creating value, right? And so AI is obviously it's an underlying technology. And can advance many things. But at the end of the day, it's like, how does that create outcomes for your customer and that they're not necessarily going to increase their purchase with this existing business because you now integrated AI? Does that allow them to get more out of what they're already getting from the existing customer base? Or does it allow you to create a new offering that attracts a new customer base because you now are able to unlock some new value for someone else? And so at the end of the day, it goes back to the fundamental challenges we're trying to help startups figure out is that at the end of the day, you need to understand a problem that it's solving. It needs to have both urgency and severity, and there's willingness to pay. And what is the outcomes that they're looking to get, and what's that return on an investment of that ultimately, payment to you as a customer. So I think that those would be the elements as we look at working with existing businesses, expanding kind of their overall offering. Obviously, there's elements of how you tie that in internally to the overall business processes. And we couldn't probably speak to that super eloquently outside of the sense of like, here's ways that you maybe think about it. But if there was a particular use case, we could dive into how AI might support an existing business and being more efficient or effective or whatever that might be. Obviously, we've if you've listened to any of our office hours or podcasts, we have definitely used AI to support us in our processes going forward. But the key fundamental for an existing business is understanding the AI readiness within that space, right? So just as we have in the marketplace, the early adopters that are purchasing as consumers AI, that's the same thing in methodology. We have to understand internally. There's the early adopters who are like, oh, I see how my life can be better using this tool. And I might use it differently than JDM does because I see a different outcome that I'm getting out of using AI than maybe he does. But at the end of the day, we're both trying to get some future state versus just I'm using AI because it's AI at the end of the day. So that's how I would maybe explore your question there. But do appreciate you bringing that in. And, if there's businesses that are looking to innovate, there's a variety of ways, and our tools and frameworks can certainly be applied to that.
Awesome. To close the loop, I loved the way that Max summarized my very long-winded response. Start with what we need to learn, get there by any means. Yep.
Ooh, that sounds like a traction thinking article in the making.
Yeah. So well done, Max. That's a good summary. I couldn't agree more. Well, with that, that's all the questions that were pre-submitted. We'll vamp for just a second to see if anybody has any further questions or follow-ups. Otherwise, we'll end a few minutes early. Opened with some shameless plugs that I shall shamelessly plug again. So if you want to dive deep into some of these things that we've talked about here about how closing the say-do gap, really like ramping up, leveling up your sales, going maybe from that first customer to the 10th customer, 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, trying to get to something that's repeatable and scalable, check out the Traction Lab Venture School. You can do the tlvs.link and it'll redirect you to the right place, or just go to tractionlab.io and check it out. We also have our investment readiness engine that we are actively recruiting for right now. So this is a program in partnership with the city of Sacramento, where we're going to work with companies both on the growth engine side and on the investment readiness side over the course of about 9 months, not to make the story better, but to make the company itself more fundable. That's a pretty competitive program to get into. We have a maximum of 10 to 15 companies that we are able to accept in that program, and they will eventually be competing for $100,000 in equity investment. So if that's interesting as well, tractionlab.io, check out the investment readiness engine there, and you can apply. We're actively interviewing now, so if you want to check those out, check those out. And lastly, Cameron, we have a live event coming up.
We sure do. We have Science in Startups Live taking place next Thursday. So we will be hosting our 100th episode of the Traction Lab podcast, and we're bringing it to you in person. So you get to have your voice and questions live on the podcast. But I'm really excited, one, just to celebrate 100 episodes. I think the usual barometer of podcast making it the distance is about 10 episodes, and so we are excited to have 10x that here pretty soon. So we'd love for you to come engage and celebrate with us, but overall, always our intention is to best support you as founders. So come and bring your questions. We're always happy to vamp and talk startups, but we want to provide the best support for you. So come join us, bring your questions, bring your energy, and that will be Thursday in the evening time. So I'll share in the chat here briefly, as maybe JDM lands the plane, the registration link for Science in Startups. So come
Awesome.
Join us.
Completely free. Come join us. So I will. Max gave his own shameless plug in the chat, which I love. And so because you ask questions and we're valuable, I'll share your shameless plug here. But of their baskets, they have almost sold out of their 100 bundles. So they've got there. If that's interests you, you want to learn more about their baskets, hit up Max. Max, thanks for asking a question. That's your little reward there. Hopefully you get to close out the rest of those based on this. And Cameron, thanks as always for hanging out with me for an hour and answering questions from the what do I usually, the Greek chorus?
The Greek chorus. There you go. Hey, it's a pleasure to join you here on our week.
That was so strained. It's a pleasure to join you here.
It's just been a pleasure to join you here. No, it's always great to be here in the space. Thank you for your questions and engagement. It makes it way more fun for JDM and myself to answer questions live. We do really appreciate the pre-submitted ones, but it is fun to go back and forth live, even though we don't get to see your faces, but we'd love to add value live to all of you. So with us, we'll be back next week, but be sure to hop into Science and Startups next Thursday. Subscribe to the Traction Lab podcast, and nonetheless, thank you all for joining, and we'll exit as we usually do with bye.